Hey guys, welcome back to another video today. I hope you guys are doing great, doing wonderful, and yeah, you're doing your thing. I wanted to make a video today. I know it's faster than the usual times that I post a video every 2 weeks, but I decided to do a week this time because I've been doing a lot since this past week, and gonna be a lot to show if I were to wait 2 weeks for it. So I decided to do this one in 1 week, and let's see how it goes. Right, as I mentioned in my game engine blog, I mentioned I was gonna put that on hold for a bit so that I can jump on and make uh, a game that I made back in the day called Revelation. I don't know where I came with that name, but I just came up with that name at the time back in the day, and it was released in the Windows Phone 7 at the time, and it's not there anymore. It got removed just because they wanted to do some updates on it, which I never did, so it got removed, and eventually I lost that project, and I have no idea what happened to the code or anything like that, and a couple years ago I decided to remake it again in Unity, and it eventually came to a stop that I never came back to it again. So it was it was somewhere in my hard drive, and I never knew that it was there till like years later after that. And I found it recently a couple months ago. I was like, oh hey, I still have this. So it kept that thought in my mind. It wasn't in the back of my mind, trying to see like, hey, when am I going to be creating this or redoing it again? And I guess that time came to be today, or last week actually, since that's when I started. And yeah, so that's where like the like a little complete story, or why I transitioned to this a little bit and put a hold on my game engine blogs for now. I will come back to it. I'm not saying that I'm not coming back to it. I just want to take a little bit different path and see how this goes. I really want to put a game out there, even if it's as simple as this one. It's not. I know that this game is not going to be that great, but as long as it's fun and it's cool, I'll be fine with that. And when it comes to making your first game is never going to be that great. So, but I'm gonna try my best to make it at least fun. But yeah, well, as I said, everything it's gonna be all space shooters. In my game engine blogs, there's also a space shooter game that I'm working on it, and this is also gonna be a space shooter. So, so that's where we're at. And I'm gonna tell you what I've been working on it since last week. I showed you a little bit of how it was looking like last week, or yeah, it was last week. What I have been working on since last time, I upgraded Unity to the latest. The other last week it was on 2020, and I decided to upgrade all the way to 2022.3. And I'm not gonna show you how it looks. It doesn't look any different. It just maybe some things, like everything was coming from the top to bottom, but in this one it's gonna be a little bit different. They come from every direction now. I mean, there's also this joystick, right? There's all these two joysticks. This one just shoots, does damage, and all that. You're able to do damage on these guys. You'll notice that the asteroids come from different directions now. Because I want to see how this feels like. Instead of going from top to bottom, I want to make the ship to go in different directions, and have two joysticks that this handles the direction where it's going to shoot at. And I know that's not how like the mechanics of a spaceship should work, right? Like you can go backwards like this, and I don't know if I want to have it this way. It's because I don't think that looks right. But like I said, as long as it's fun, I guess that's fine by me. So I'm gonna leave it this way. The only difference, besides like the asteroids coming from different directions, actually, no, let's make this a little bit full screen. There we go. So it's not like crazy a lot of stuff. So besides the asteroids coming from different directions of the screen, the only difference from the last time, as a visual difference, is that when you destroy a ship, it doesn't drop those green orbs anymore. I did a lot of changes in the back end, and as you can see, as you read in the title, I decided to go using the Unity dot system. Dots standing for data oriented technology stack. That's what I wanted to see how it feel like. I never actually touched that part of Unity, and I wanted to try it out and see. You gotta learn new things, right? And this is a way to be able to learn new things. I know my way around Unity pretty well because I've used it for a long time, but I wanted to be able to know other stuff that Unity does that I've never touched before. So that's why I'm doing this video and see how this gonna be looking like. I don't know if I should be doing this for my first game, but hey, I'm taking some risks right now to see how is this gonna feel like, and see, if it looks cool. I wanted to make this like a bullet hell type of game, so be able to shoot like a crazy amount of bullets and all that. And the reason why I went to the dot system is to be able to do that. So let's see how it goes. Let's see if it's gonna be fun or not. So yeah, so like I said, nothing huge changed there as visual wise, but the only thing that changed completely was the internal side, I guess, the code side of it, and that is using the dot system. Like I said, I never used it before, so I had to do some learning and figure out how that works and all that. Well, actually I did use it, but that was a couple years ago, and it's a lot different than it was now. It's completely different, and it's so much easier now to be able to do stuff in here. At least I think so, compared to how it was a couple years ago. So I'm gonna show you one side of it. It's one side of the code for this, because majority of the code actually follows the same format and the same flow. So I'm gonna show you one version of it, and I probably can show you the projectile system. So the projectile spawner system, this is how the projectiles that the player shoots, the player ship shoots, and all those projectiles that he shoots, and be showing that how that works. So as you should know, the DOS system uses entities instead of game objects. So this is what this class is going to be doing. So it converts a game object to an entity. So for right now, I have this projectile spawner, right? This is a game object, and when you attach this projectile spawner authoring class or script, which is what's in here, this is just a regular game object that is attached to the projectile spawner game object. And the way that it converts it to an entity is by doing this baker thing. You pass in the class into the baker, and this automatically creates the entity for you. So it creates an entity. It automatically calls this bake function. It'll create an entity, and then you can basically just add all the components that you want to add for this specific entity. And in my case, it's going to be the spawner. So initialize the spawner, determine what level it's going to be at, and all the other components that it's going to be using for this specific entity. And I'm be going through these individually as I keep going. But yeah, that's as simple as it is. You from what I've seen online, is basically every time a game object that's gonna be converted into an entity using the baker system, they all follow the format of calling it authoring. So that's what I'm doing. I'm following the same format, calling the authoring for that. So yeah, so this converts the game object to an entity, and then you will have a system that basically iterates through all of this entities. So this system, for me, I'm calling it a projectile spawner system. This is when you create this class, you don't really have to do anything. The Unity basically already creates this system for you. When I guess it's already created right now. Is it already created? Is it already created? No, it's not created. So it creates it at runtime. Every time you inherit from iSystem, there's two different versions of iSystem. Versions of systems. There's one called system base and another called iSystem. For the system base, you're able to call, like I can show you. I have a one system, so a player input system, right? This one has things here, like you have these action delegates, and you're able to call managed classes and all that in a system base, but you won't be able to do this in an iSystem because it wants it to be unmanaged. That's the only difference between those two. And the iSystem can do burst compiling. It's able to use the burst, and it improves the performance a lot when it comes to doing jobs. And the only way to be able to do burst is in iSystems. So I have this projectile spawner system that is going to be for shooting projectiles, right? It's a spawner system that's going to be handling shooting projectiles and all that. You create the necessary functions that you need to call. Like for my case, I have this state that says that require for update and playership. What that means is that I want to make sure that this projectile spawner system does not update until there's a playership in the scene. So it will hold until there's a playership in the scene. And the reason why I'm waiting for a playership is because this projectile system is for the player. I don't want to continue forward without actually needing a player, and the reason for is that on the update I'm actually grabbing that entity playership entity. Otherwise, if I didn't have this will give me some errors at the beginning, because like the system gets created first and it will call update, and this will give you a bunch of errors. You're saying, hey, there's no playership or whatever. So we want to make sure we update after there's a playership in the system, in the scene. So I grab the entity, the player entity, and then I check to see if I'm shooting. And that is when I get the right side of here, or the joystick. So once you tap this and you move in a certain direction, it sets the ship to say, hey, I'm shooting now. I'm ready to shoot. So then it will go through here, get all the necessary data you need to pass it into the job system. And in here, I start scheduling all these jobs in parallel, right? So right now, I'm doing the projectile spawner has a level, and I'm using this level to do a bitwise operation on it to determine if that certain bit is on or not. And the reason why I went into using this way is because I didn't want to have multiple Boolean flags. I didn't want to have like, hey, am I able to do a single shot? Or am I able to do a double shot? Am I able to do a triple shot? And so on, you know. For now, I only have single, double, triple, and missiles, but I might have to add another one in the future. I don't know how much projectiles are going to be, but I didn't want to keep adding new flags. So I'm using a bitwise operation, a single integer, to be able to determine if this bit is on or not. And if it is, and then it schedules a job for the single. And if it has another one for double, it will do double. And the reason I went for ifs instead of else ifs is because I can do multiple shots. As you saw in my scene right now, here is doing multiple shots. So it's doing single, double, triple, and the missiles doesn't really do anything yet. I haven't added that functionality yet, but it does shoot, and it just does the normal bullet projectile for now. But eventually I'm gonna add the functionality for the missile, and I can actually show you how I'm doing this bit operation. Ship authoring, here we go. So here I'm doing the projectile level to do I don't do missiles yet. Actually, I do a single, double, or a triple. If I didn't want all of them, I just wanted one of them. So let's save that. If I were to shoot now, it only does a single shot. So I went in that direction because like, hey, that'd be pretty sweet to just use the same thing, doing the bitwise operation, and be able to do this without creating multiple Boolean flags, right? Let's make sure Unity is updated with that. Update it, returning it back to normal. So yeah, so this is the system. So it uses the player's level against the projectile's level and checks to see if it's able to do that or not. If the level is not the same, it upgrades the spawner to like, hey, I can now do a single shot, double shot, and all that. I'll show you the code for that in a bit, but yeah. So if the single bit is on, it will do the single shot. It will spawn the entities for single shots, for double shot entities, tripling, all that, right? And these jobs are created out here, right? Outside of the class. You could actually also put it inside, but I want to keep it simple and clean and put it outside. So you do an entity job and you inherit from iJob entity. And what this is doing is basically iterating through all the entities that have this query to go here. So this is an I aspect. An I aspect, if you go inside, it does an I query. And here's some I query. So basically what this is doing is it's doing a querying for all entities that have these two components, right? So it iterates through all the entities in the scene, it queries it, and only grabs and keeps track of all the entities that have the spawner component and the weapon single shot component, and it has to have these two, at least these two, and both of them being active to be able to iterate through this, to be able to execute this job for that specific entity. So all entities that have these, at least this minimum of two components that are enabled, it will iterate through them and execute a job for them. So that's what this aspect is doing. So it's iterating through all the through my spawners, and if this spawner is a single shot, it would then call this and start spawning my projectile for that. So for the single shot, it will create a single projectile and spawn it and all that. And as I mentioned earlier, I mentioned that the player, it uses the spawner and checks it against the level of the player. And if it's not the same, then I upgrade the projectile spawner, and I check which component I should be enabling it by doing the bitwise operation on that single, on that bit. So on the single, double, triple, and this is how I actually enable them or disable them to be able to know which aspect to be able to do the job for, right? So I created this another struct that has these public static functions in here. I don't know if this is a good way to do it. Now I will have to do some profiling and checking all that. But the reason why I went this way is because I didn't want to create this code be done in every single aspect, you know, because I'm calling the projectile spawn projectile, and I will have to call the same code for every single one of them, and I didn't want to do that. I'll have to check to see if this is okay to do or not. And the same thing for leveling. I didn't want to do this for every single aspect, right? And I have multiple aspects, as I mentioned before. I have a single aspect that has a single shot. I have a double shot aspect that has the double shot. And the same thing for triple, and same thing for missile count. And the reason why I went in this direction is that, as I mentioned earlier, I enable the components depending on the bitwise operation that it does with this, with that bit for the single, double, triple. So if I only had a single shot, actually let's backtrack a little bit on this update spawner system. I'm doing a job for a single shot for this job. That's a single. I'm doing a job for a double. I'm doing a job for a triple and a missile, right? So it's going through these. Let me mute my phone actually. So I have these jobs that has the specific aspect on them. So a single shot, a double shot aspect, triple shot aspect, and a missile shot aspect. So when you call and create a job for this, and let's pretend now I only have this enabled, right? The single shot, and the rest is disabled. It will call my single shot first, and we'll do a query and see if this spawner has this components enabled, and if it does, it creates it, right? And then we'll do the same thing for the double shot, and what this one will get ignored because the word double shot is disabled. It doesn't have the double shot, so this one's not going to get called. The same thing for the triple, and the same thing for the whip missile, because right now I only have that specific component enabled. And as my player level increases to whatever level it needs to go to, it then upgrades, and I will have a single shot enabled, I will have a double shot enabled, and the other two will be disabled. So when it comes to single shot, it will then actually create that job and execute that job and create a single shot. And since this one now is enabled, the double shot, it will then enable and execute this specific job, and so on, etc., right? So this is creating all these projectiles and instantiating them depending if I'm single or double, triple, or missile, or any future components that I'll be using in the future. And how this projectile is moving is that I created another system for that called projectile moving system. So as of right now, you actually don't even need to create this. I thought initially you needed to create it, but I found out later you don't need to. If it's empty, I'm just gonna remove it. I only want to have functions that I'm actually gonna be touching, right? I think it makes it look cleaner and all that. So I noticed this is another system that inherits from my system, so to be able to use the burst compiler, the burst system. And what this system job or main function is going to be is to be able to move my projectile. So I create a job, and what this job is going to be doing is iterating through all the iterating through all the entities that has this specific aspect. And as I mentioned earlier, you already know what aspect is, and it's basically querying all these entities that have this specific aspect. And if I go here, actually let's go here because it doesn't look good. So I have this aspect, projectile aspect, and what the system is doing is iterating through all the entities that has these three components: and transform local, a bullet, and a speed component on them. And if all these three are enabled, it will then execute and do this job to be able to move my projectile. So it deducts some lifetime and moves my position in a certain direction and rotates to that specific direction that it's supposed to be rotating to. And that's it. That's all it's doing, right? So a quick recap. I have the system that inherits from my system to be able to do the burst. It updates. It creates a job in parallel to be executed for all entities that have this specific aspect, which is that basically what it does is to be able know that it has these 3 components. I can make it a little bit, the reason why you want to have an aspect is because you want to make it a little clean, right? Let's move this out of the way, because if you didn't have that, you will need to actually do this, and that will look kind of nasty, and you will have this long, I mean, this only has 3, so it's not too bad, right? And I will have to initially call this and be able to do that, and I will have to move all of this stuff over here. And this is what this job is going to be doing, right? And this is simple, that maybe it's okay to have it like this, but you're gonna have systems like, I have other systems that actually has a whole bunch of other stuff in here. And the way to avoid having a super long parameter function is to do aspects. And what's also great about aspects is, even though it's querying for it, you can also create your own functions for it, as you noticed. And to be honest, this looks a lot better than how it was before with all those parameters in there, right? So that's basically what it's doing. What this is doing is executing that job for every component that you pass in here, that has a transform local, that has a bullet component, and that has a speed. And you can clean that up by doing aspects. And that's basically what this thought system is doing, at least in my case. You have an authoring that converts the game object to an entity, or in my case, the one that I showed you creates the spawner and converts it to an entity, and then it has a system that iterates to that projectile spawner, and depending on the spawner, if it's a single shot, double shot, triple shot, it will then create this respective projectiles and shoot them. And then once the projectile is instantiated, it will then do the projectile moving system, which then when it creates the entities, projectiles, it adds the bullet and speed components for it. And then once it's instantiated, the projectile moving system already knows about it, and then it will start moving that projectile, do that job. And then it has a lifetime, and once the lifetime is less than 0 and it's not alive, I then destroy it. I probably will have to move this to another place or something. Maybe this deletion, well, that will be moved into a system base, because I may need to do some events to be able to determine when an object is destroyed or an enemy is destroyed. I need to determine to let know the UI and all that, like, hey, you scored some points and all that. So I might need to move the detection. I'm gonna have to create another system that maybe I might call it, like, actually this is a projectile system just for alive, but this is the other system for detecting collisions. I'm doing ray casting, all that. I will need to determine, I will need to move this, so if when I destroy an enemy, I'm gonna have to move this somewhere outside. Maybe flag it like, hey, this is dead, and create another system that iterates through all the entities that are dead, and be able to determine like, hey, you scored this amount of points, or and all that. I'm still trying to figure that out. But that's about it that I want to show you guys today. It's already 30 minutes. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I'm trying to show you all this crazy stuff here. And if I were to wait 2 weeks, the other video probably would be like an hour long, maybe. I don't know. But I hope you guys understood what I tried to say here. I did my best to explain what was going on in the system. And this is what this is doing, right? So my projectile spawner instantiates these bullets. It iterates and determines like, hey, am I a single shot, am I a triple shot missile, and then instantiates the bullets, as you can see right now. And then after that projectile entity is spawned, it then goes into the projectile moving system, which then moves the projectile in that direction. And then it does the raycast system to determine collisions with asteroids and other enemies and stuff. So this basically, I didn't show you the rest though, just because they all follow the same format. Like the same thing for asteroid, you create an authoring component for it. You pass in the prefab for it to determine which asteroid to spawn and initialize all the stuff. And it creates the entity for it. For this spawner, the spawner does the same thing where it has its own asteroid spawner system, which then goes through all the jobs to spawn. The same thing as the projectile, which is why I didn't show you. The same thing for ice spawner entity. Ice spawner. It has an authoring system, which then iterates and spawns the entity or the enemy. And yeah, I don't want to show you the same thing over and over, right? And that's basically what it's doing right now. So my next steps that I want to work on here is, and also keep in mind I had 1 week to work on this. So like this joystick, I do not like the way it looks. So I still have a lot of more things I need to do to improve it. Other things I would like to add is adding like a visual effect when you destroy a certain entity. Like when I destroy this asteroid, it doesn't do anything, it just disappears. Maybe I'll create some type of like explosion effect or something. So that's one thing I definitely got to do. Another one is for enemies to shoot. Enemies don't shoot right now, so that's something that I definitely got to work on. I got to add like a boss entity as well, and then be able to manage this system. So the waves, because this game is gonna be based on waves, right? You can have wave 1, which spawn enemies, and once you destroy all those enemies, it will go to wave 2, and then wave 3, and so on, right? I need to be able to manage that system. And I also have, as you notice, I'm only showing you one version of the AI right now, AI spawner aspect here. So right now I'm only showing you a version of them where they do like, they reach the destination and then it starts switching between points, right? I have other ones in here. Hold on, okay, I'm just about to sneeze. Excuse me. So right now, actually this doesn't really do much right now. So I want to be able to manage this spawner system, to be able to handle like the functionality of what that wave is going to be doing and how much AIs or groups it can be spawning. So I need to be in the future, I need to work on this to be able to make that work. I kind of have like the base functionality for it, but I still need to determine when I destroy entities to be then say, hey, I need to progress to the next wave, which I do not have that functionality in just yet. I wanted to show this. Is this okay? And all this stuff is just commented out because I have it working, but I just need to be able to find a way to manage them correctly. So that's why I have all these to-dos. I need a start position. Oh, you know what? This is probably because this needs to be on. I did some cleanup. Might as well do it now. So let's move it to the top. And I think this one's also in a pattern. Oh no, wait, hold on. I need to call the pattern. It goes new pattern. I'll be able to call that inside of that. Yep. And everything else is in there as well, I think. Or this one should be outside. Yeah, So that goes there. I did some cleanup since Spiral was the first one I worked on, and I did some cleanup on it. And I never actually put this where it should be at. There we go. Now I can just remove all that. There we go. I think this should spawn. I haven't tested this because, like I said, Spiral was the first one that I worked on, so it may not work, but I hope it does. It was working when I first touched it, so I'm just showing you all the different versions of the AI that I have, or just this one. So you saw the other one that switches. This one that's like a spiral form, and once it goes off screen, and then reverts to this side again, and just keeps doing this thing, right? Cool. So yeah, so I need to create all these wave systems that'll be able to spawn these entities or groups of AI. Depending on the wave, as the wave progresses, the more enemies gonna be there, or there's gonna be less but more powerful enemies. So that's where I am at right now, trying to figure out all that stuff out right now. And I don't need 2 of these components, so I already have. What, it was an AI ship, right? Yeah. So I don't need 2 of those. And I can actually show you. Which one do I want to show you next? I guess I can show you a circular one. And I think this one probably. Oh, it needs a target and a radius. I think that was. Yeah, it does this. There we go. Radius and so it needs those 2. So I'm showing you. I can show you 3 different types. The first one that you saw, the second one with the spiral, and the circular one. I'm trying to figure out what other patterns I can do. That would be pretty sweet. It comes in, does circle, and does a couple of times, and then comes back out. And eventually it's gonna be where ships are gonna be shooting projectiles, so I think it will look so much better when it comes to that point. Just trying to figure out what I want to do with all that stuff. I didn't want to do this. Just close it for now. And I still haven't brought in the blocky ships that I mentioned in my game engine series. I still need to bring that in here, and so I'll be able to use that in here. So yeah, so I got to think about this. So things that I need to work on was when I destroy like either asteroids or ships or AI, is to create like maybe like explosion effect or something. AI is to drop certain drops that the player can pick up. The power up system of the player, like things that he can do, like maybe there's gonna be shield, there's gonna be maybe a power up that can like protect the ship and be able to do damage. What else? The other thing is figure out if I want the background to scroll down or not. I don't know if I want that. Because it definitely looks weird, right? It looks like you're going down and you're moving up, but you got asteroids shooting up. So like, where does it come from, right? Or if I'm looking down, I don't know how I want this yet, or if it looks cool. I'm gonna leave it as is for now, but I may have to change it and maybe make it static, and as I'm moving to the edge, maybe what's the name for it? I forgot the name for it, but maybe it moves the background just a little bit to the left or to the right, and if you're on the right, it moves the background a little bit to the left. I don't know what I want to do with it, and I have a whole bunch of AI here now. I guess a whole bunch. And they're still spawning a whole bunch of them right now, and I'm still like 130 frames basically. Actually, let's find out can I find out how much I have? No, I can't, because I'm in a down full screen right now. Hold on, I want to see if I'm able to show you guys. Systems here. So right now, actually it's not that many. Only 69. There's 74 entities now on screen. So I think I put like 5 seconds, or every 5 or 10 seconds spawns 5 more. So I'm at 79 now. That's crazy. But yeah, that's where it's at right now, guys. There's still a lot of things I gotta figure out, but what I'm gonna work on this next week is to be able to determine when I destroy an enemy, to be able to do all this like UI, be able to determine when I destroy an enemy, to be able to determine like scoring and all that, and be able to make the AI shoot. So that's where I'm gonna leave it at. I may do more, or I may just do those things. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I try to explain what I'm doing with the Unity thought system, so I hope you guys understood. Or if you already understand, great. And there's any feedback like, hey, look into this, or do if you do this will be so much better. Feel free to like post it in the comments. Let me know. I'm always looking for feedback and ways to improve. And this is what these blogs are for, right? To hopefully I teach you something, or you guys teach me something. So, but yeah, if you guys do enjoy this video and give it a thumbs up, it does help me out a lot. And if you don't, you don't have to do anything, or put a thumbs down. And yeah, we'll see where we're at next time. There's so much more. It's so crazy here. And as you notice, the frame's starting to drop a little bit. Oh, well, it's still like 130, but it's going down to like 120. It's jumping around there right now, right? Let's start destroying some bunch of them. But yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and we'll see where this takes me right now. I definitely am excited. So, and I'm just putting it to where it was at last time, and maybe making it a little bit better, because in Windows 7, Phone 7 at the time, everything was top down, right? Everything was coming from the top and going all the way to the bottom. But this one, I improved it a little bit, or changed it differently, to be able to have asteroids shooting from different directions and all that, having all these enemies, which I didn't have at the time. So that's where we're going. So next time, working on detection when I destroy enemies, and be able to have enemies shoot. So that's a minimum. I may do more, I may do less, I have no idea. So we'll find out. But anyways, guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Signing out.